Hey, I'm Angela Walters from Quilting is My Therapy, and in this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to quilt the Pebbles design. Never has a design been made up of such a basic shape, yet frustrated so many quilters. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to quilt it, as well as some fun, different variations. I'll show you how to quilt it on a sewing machine and a long arm, and I'll help troubleshoot some common frustrations. So let's get to it. First up, the classic traditional Pebbles design. So I'm going to start by quilting a circle. And then I'm going to quilt another one. The trick is, though, I'm going to quilt it in the opposite direction. So this one I've just quilted clockwise. I'm going to quilt the next one counterclockwise. Try almost have like a figure 8. Now it's this change of direction that's really going to help those pebbles come close together and fill in that area. So now I have 2 pebbles. Let's add one more, going again in the opposite direction. So now I'm going to go clockwise. And there I have a first little set of pebbles. And now I'm going to give you just one more thing to think about: traveling. Traveling is quilting along a previously quilted line, which, let's be honest, is the funniest joke of this whole tutorial. I'm asking you to quilt a circle and then quilt on it again. But traveling is important because it's going to help us maneuver our way around the area. If I kept going like this, I'm going to get a row of pebbles, which isn't the end of the world, but I want it to fill in a whole area. So traveling is going to help me go in all different directions. So let's pretend I'm here and I want to add another pebble on the other side. I'm going to travel until I get there and then quilt my next circle. Again, going in the opposite direction. You can think of it as clockwise, counterclockwise. I tend to think of it as quilting away from the one I've just quilted. Whatever makes it easier, just make sure it's going in the opposite direction. Now I finished this one, let's add another one. I'm going to put it right here. So that means I'm going to have to travel around this circle just a little bit to get to that point. And if I want to add another one on top of that one, I'm going to have to travel yet again. Now, if you find traveling difficult, don't worry, you're definitely not alone. We're not aiming for perfection here, we're just using that as a way to move around the area. I'm going to look ahead of where I'm going, I'm going to try to get it close, but I also know when this whole area is filled in, all I'm going to see is those beautiful pops of those pebbles. So don't stress about it, just keep on going. And what's great about traveling is I can use it as a way to really get through my area. So if I'm over here and I want to get to the other side, I'm simply going to travel around the circles and get there. One thing that will be very, very helpful is when you're quilting the Pebbles design, use a thread color that matches your quilt top. I'm using this darker color that shows you exactly what I'm doing. However, this design looks way better when it's quilted with a matching thread color. Now let's talk through a couple troubleshooting things and common frustrations with this design. One of the most common frustrations for most quilters is not being able to get those circles nice and round. Trust me, it's going to come with practice. One thing that does help, though, is getting a momentum down. Having a nice fluid momentum means that you'll get a smooth line. And I'm not aiming for perfectly round. I'm not even aiming for exactly all the same size. I'm aiming for smooth lines. If my lines are smooth, it'll look perfect, even if it isn't. Sometimes we tend to overthink a design and we tend to hold tighter and quilt slower, thinking it will help, and it doesn't. So if you find that your circles aren't smooth or round, maybe try going just a little bit faster and using that momentum to carry you through to give you that nice shape. Another thing that will help make your pebbles look the best they can is to make sure that you fill in any gaps while you're there. Now, of course, I know we've heard this a lot of times throughout this series, but it is so important, especially with this design. For the most part, I like to think of my pebbles as a blob. I like to take that area and just keep building it up, filling it in, and not leaving any gaps behind. Instead of quilting a row of pebbles here and a row of here and leaving gaps all around, I want to fill it in while I'm there. Now sometimes it can be tricky to know which gaps do you fill in and which ones do you leave. In general, my rule of thumb, if the gap is the same size as a pebble or smaller, I'm going to leave it alone. For instance, if I have a gap like this one right here, it's about the same size, it's actually a little bit smaller than the pebbles, it's not going to show up, so I'm going to leave it. Sometimes our tendency is to want to go in there and add little pebbles to fill it in, but the problem is that's going to draw attention to that in a different way. So if it's the same size or smaller, leave it. But if the gap is bigger than the pebbles and it sticks out, definitely work your way back and fill it in. For instance, if I have a gap like this, which is bigger than the pebbles, I'm gonna come through another pebble or two in there, fill it in, and then move on. And that's why traveling is so handy. I can use it to easily work my way around pebbles and get to that spot, instead of having to break thread and start a new line of quilting. You might be doing all the right things and your pebbles might still not look quite right. If that's the case, it might be because of one of two things. So let's do a little troubleshooting and see if we can't figure it out. First, let's look at this example. In this example, I tend to be going in one direction and I'm getting a thread buildup in between those pebbles. What I'm forgetting to do is travel. Remember, we want to go in all different directions, so if I'm not traveling around any of my pebbles, I'm going to end up going in a row. Now, if this happens, not the end of the world. We're just going to keep filling in around it and moving on. Now, let's troubleshoot another common frustration. What if you get something like this? Something that's very reminiscent of an old school telephone cord. I'm quilting my circles nice and round, but I'm forgetting to change direction. Remember, it's that change of direction that's really going to allow them to stick together, and it's going to prevent me from getting any gaps like that between them. And again, you know how to fix it. If this happens, I'm going to make sure I just keep going, filling in around it. But this time, quilting my pebbles so that I'm changing direction. And please remember, at any time you can stop, think about where you want to add your next pebble, use traveling to get there if necessary, and then quilt it. You don't have to quilt this design without stopping. Take little breaks and figure out where you need to go. Now, let's learn some different variations to really help you use this design in different ways. First, let's talk about a slightly easier variation. If you're brand new to free motion quilting and you're a little stressed out about the idea of quilting pebbles, let's switch it to loops. When quilting a loopy meander, I'm simply just quilting a meandering line that goes in all different directions. Once I'm ready and I'm feeling comfortable, I can just quilt a little loop and then continue on. This is going to help me get used to the idea of quilting that circle, getting comfortable with moving without the pressure of changing direction and filling in the whole area. It's going to help us kind of ease into those pebbles. And then, once you get comfortable with the idea of quilting loops every once in a while, you can try to branch out and quilt a figure 8. Quilting my meandering line, quilting a circle, and then going right into another one that goes in the opposite direction. And this is going to help you tiptoe into the idea of quilting them in different directions. And who knows, maybe after that you get a little bit more courageous. You can quilt 3 or 4 loops and then move on. This is going to allow you to kind of ease into it and build up to it without overwhelming you. So whether you quilt them so they're nice together or you put a little meandering line in between it, it's still going to be beautiful on your quilts. Now, let's learn a different variation where we quilt them all different sizes. The traditional Pebbles design is comprised of circles all the same size. This makes it a great filler because it doesn't have any movement, it just kind of flattens that area, gives a nice texture, and makes whatever you're quilting around pop. But if I want to do this over a whole quilt, that would not only take forever, I wouldn't get quite the same effect. So in that instance, what I'm going to do is change up the sizes of my pebbles. It's going to give it a softer look, and as a bonus, it's a lot faster. The trick to making this design look great is making sure that there's enough difference in the size of your pebbles. If they're too similar in size, it'll just look like you were trying to make them the same size and didn't. I like to think of coins. I'll make some quarter sized, some dime sized, some nickel sized, and maybe even some smaller ones. Having that reference will help ensure that I have enough variation in the sizes. Another thing that makes this design go easier is to quilt the bigger ones first, and then fill in with the littler ones. You can make them bigger if you like, or smaller. Just make sure there's enough difference in between the sizes so it looks intentional. But besides that, everything else is the same. I'm still going to quilt my pebbles going in different directions, I'm still going to travel to get to where I need to go, and I'm still going to try not to leave any gaps. If you're newer to machine quilting, you might find this variation easier since you're just learning the shape. But no matter your skill level, I definitely think it's a design to learn because you can use it on so many different kinds of quilts. And let's be honest, I really love the look of pebbles. I just don't like quilting a lot of them. It can get kind of tedious and boring after a while, so I love to combine it with other designs to help switch it up. Now I'm going to go to the long arm and show you how to combine this design with leaves and flowers and other designs. I'm going to start by quilting the designs that take a little bit more space and time to develop, like the flowers or the leaves. And then I'm going to use the pebbles to fill in the gaps. Up to this point, we've been using echoing to fill in any gaps, but now we're going to throw in some of those pebbles. Once the gap's filled in, I'm going to start quilting another design and then continue on. Quilting flowers and leaves and pebbles, just being sure that the whole area is filled in. You might think that using so many different designs on a quilt could be overwhelming, but if you keep the spacing consistent between all the designs, you're going to get a lovely texture. That means that one particular design won't show up more than the other. Now, while I am trying to keep the spacing the same and make sure all the gaps are filled in, one thing that I'm not worried about is the ratio of designs to each other. I'm not worried if I have enough flowers or enough leaves or if I did too many pebbles. It really doesn't matter. I'm just going to switch in between them, doing whatever I feel like at the moment. If I've quilted a couple flowers and I decide, you know what, I don't like this anymore, I'm going to stop quilting them. This is a great way to practice a new design without committing to using it over the whole area. It can be stressful using a brand new design on a quilt. So quilting something that you already feel comfortable with, like the flowers or the leaves, and then just throwing in a design that's not so comfortable, like the pebbles, is a great way to ease into a new design. And when you're done, you have a design that was so much fun to quilt, looks beautiful, and adds a really cool look to your quilt. Now in that example, I'm throwing all the different designs together. But if I wanted to, I can put the pebbles inside other designs to really make that pop. Throwing those pebbles inside some leaves really gives you a cool effect. So let me show you how to do that. So now we're going to start by quilting our first leaf shape. And we saw this in week 2, so you can check out that video if you need a little refresher. But the difference here is I'm going to quilt it bigger because I'm going to fill in with pebbles and I want a little bit more room. So a good couple of inches long and wide. And then in that space, I'm going to quilt my pebbles so that it fills the area, but returns me back to where I started. So I'm going to kind of work my way along one side and then come back to my starting point. This is usually about how many pebbles I like to quilt before I get bored. So once I'm finished filling it in, it's time to echo it. And I'm definitely going to echo it at least twice, because if I'm taking the time to put these pebbles in that little shape, I kind of want to show it off with some echo lines. And then it's time to quilt my next leaf. But I'm not putting pebbles in all the leaves. Instead, I'm going to quilt regular leaves until I get to where I want to add my next pebbled leaf and then quilt it there. Basically, I'm going to try quilting them so that they move along an area and really draw attention. If I wanted to quilt them so that they followed an area, I could use a marking utensil to quickly mark out that line and then make sure that all my pebbled leaves fall on that line. Everywhere else will be just regular leaves. Now that's going to create this element that moves around an area and really draws attention to it. Then when I'm ready to quilt my next pebbled leaf, I'm going to quilt that first shape, leaving it nice and big so I have room to fill it in, and then filling it in and coming back to the starting point. And if I don't end up quite where I want to, we know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to quilt along those circles to get where I need to go. And then of course, once it's filled in, I'm going to echo it a couple times and then continue quilting my regular leaves and my pebbled leaves in a way that draws attention to the area of that quilt. This obviously isn't a design that we want to use on every quilt, but it definitely will draw attention to areas that you want to show off or attention away from areas that you want to hide. Plus, it's a great way to practice that pebble design without committing to filling in a whole area. Another way you can change up this variation and make it a little different is to use different fillers. You could use those meandering loopy lines that we saw, swirls, really any design that will fill in the area and bring you back to where I started. This is something I love to do when I want to create something to draw attention in an area or create movement. Now it's your turn. If you're quilting along with me on the custom panel I designed for this challenge, fill in the areas highlighted in red with the designs of your choice. You can quilt pebbles over the whole thing, try some variations, or even combine them with other designs to really make your quilting pop. And don't forget, I have downloadable quilting diagrams that will show you how to quilt this design and give you some tips as well. And if you need a little bit more help, I have an expanded resource with even more pictures and even more quilting tips. You can find both of those by clicking the link in the description box below. And I'll be back next week with a new tutorial where I'm going to show you the elongated swirl, one of my all-time favorite quilting designs. So until then, happy quilting. And if you're enjoying this tutorial or any of my other videos, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up. That'll help other quilters find it as well.